Hello, it's John Heaton, and I'm going to do my tribute to Brian Wilson, rest in peace, who recently died, sadly. A giant of the music business, as we all know, and perhaps not quite as huge a fan as some of my colleagues on the YouTube channels, but still, when he was good, he was very good. And I've picked out my top 20 Brian Wilson songs, Beach Boys songs, although I've taken into account some of his solo work, some of which I've heard. But it might be noticeable for you that I haven't picked much latter day stuff. Most of my stuff is in the 60s, a couple of songs from the 70s, and you might be surprised that some big ones missing. But that's just my opinion, doesn't mean that you have to share it. And if I'm honest, if I had to do my top 20 Beach Boys songs, including everything, I might have included Disney Girls, written by Bruce Johnston, and Kokomo, the late 80s single, which Mike Love was championing without the involvement of Brian. I think it's a great single. But anyway, these 20 songs are songs which Brian Wilson co-wrote. Obviously, he didn't write the lyrics in many cases. He co-wrote the songs in most of the cases with someone else, but that's okay. And it's just interesting because Post Surf's Up doesn't really feature on my list, and some of my colleagues and famous people like Elton John have said he really got into the early 70s Beach Boys albums like Holland and Sunflower, Carl and the Passions, and I've listened to those albums, but they don't really do it for me in the same way as the ones I've picked. Larry Graves is raving about Sunflower, saying it's as good as Pet Sounds, so I listened to it just now and just to see if I was missing anything. And Deirdre, the song, nearly made my top 20. I nearly snuck it in there because that's a good track. James Griffiths is raving about the 1977 album Love You. And again, I don't see what the big fuss is about. I don't rate that album at all, unfortunately. And 15 Big Ones and MIU and Carl and the Passions and even the solo album Love and Mercy. I've got them, but it never really moved me to the same extent that the 60s stuff did. So Brian Wilson, obviously a tragic character who kind of he gave up touring very early. And he kind of had mental health problems and drug problems, and he almost went the way of Syd Barrett, but thankfully didn't. And he's obviously recently died, but at a ripe old age. And I noticed that his voice post 71 it suffered from his lifestyle choices, and when he performed, I think it was God Only Knows at the Queen's, I think it was her Golden Jubilee 2002. He did a version of God Only Knows, and it was very ropey. He could hardly play the keyboards and he could hardly sing it, and it was a little bit sad. But anyway, we're here to celebrate the artist when he was good, when he was brilliant, and in my view that is captured by these 20 songs. So in reverse order, I'm going to start with Help Me Rhonda, which was a great single from, if you notice, a lot of the songs on my list do come from this superb Endless Summer compilation. Not that there's anything wrong with compilations, and I'm sure I'm going to get some comments that why didn't you choose some of the more obscure tracks, but I think that album is how many songs has it got? 21 tracks, I think it is. More or less solid gold, but not every track, but Help Me Rhonda is a great track, and I like the way they increase and decrease the volume to increase the impact of the song, and that's my number 20. Number 19 is the only latter day song I've chosen, which was from a fairly recent Beach Boys album called That's Why God Made the Radio. It's the title track, and it's a decent effort. I love it, good harmonies and sort of harking back to their greatness, their previous greatness. Don't Talk, Put Your Head on My Shoulder from Pet Sounds is number 18. It's a glorious ballad. That's Not Me, another very moving track from Pet Sounds. I Know There's an Answer, which was previously Hang On To Your Ego, but he changed the lyrics to make it more accessible, I guess. I know there's an answer number 16, great track. Friends, the waltz track, title track from the 1968 album. I love it. Fun, Fun, Fun is a glorious early single of theirs, Beach Boys, and I love the version they did with Status Quo a few years later. That was a lot of fun. The Girls on the Beach, number 13, are just glorious lyrics, you know, and conjuring up the imagery of those of us who don't live in California, who were wondering what all the fuss was about, all the surfers and the California lifestyle, and it really does evoke that kind of lifestyle. And I love the words, so even though they're probably a bit cheesy, that it's a winner for me. And I Went to Sleep from 2020, 1969 album, quite a short track, but gloriously dreamy melody, and quite a short track, as I say, but very good. I Just Wasn't Made for These Times is a very introspective song from Brian, and I hasten to add he didn't actually write the lyrics for a lot of the tracks I'm talking about, but and even though you would have thought that some of these tracks were autobiographical, with Brian singing things like I Just Wasn't Made for These Times, he didn't actually write the lyrics to a lot of them, but it's still a great song. Don't Worry Baby, which is another track from the Endless Summer compilation, and Glorious Harmonies. Surf's Up from the 1971 album. It's a title track from that album, and it's just a lost gem. I think it was recorded around the time of Smile, and it's just a masterpiece, and it was great to hear that. The Warmth of the Sun is another very, excuse the pun, but a warm lyric, and very affecting, and one can almost imagine oneself on the beach of in California listening to a track like this. I think it's very uplifting. And Do It Again is a big favourite of mine from the 2020 album from 1969, and again they're talking about the beach, and they're talking about all the things we used to do, and well, let's go back and do it again. And the vibe is just infectious, and I'm not surprised that was a big hit single. Well, not huge, but it returned to the charts for them. Catch a Wave is a glorious early single with Mike Love singing the lead vocal, but the unmistakable Beach Boys harmony and a very uplifting lyric. Love it to bits. Till I Die is from 1971, Surf's Up, and Idle Cork on the Ocean, floating over the stormy sea. How big is the ocean, you know, that kind of lyric, dreamy lyric. And Until I Die, these things are me until I die, and Mike Love's helping out with the vocals, and it's a very affecting song, probably my favourite song on Surf's Up, and made number 5 on this list. You Still Believe in Me from Pet Sounds, the second track on side 1, and just glorious harmonies, and just beautiful song. My son Tommy loves this one. God Only Knows, number 3, could have been number 1, but I've got a couple above it which I even love a bit more. But what a perfect song, and Paul McCartney was right to say it's one of the greatest songs ever written. It is, and it's a complete masterpiece, and I acknowledge all the things people are saying about without Pet Sounds there wouldn't have been a Sgt. Pepper, and they pushed each other to the limit in the mid-60s, and it's just a shame that Brian kind of lost the plot a bit with the follow-up to Pet Sounds' Smile not being realised until many years later, for one reason or another. So God Only Knows, what a classic, what an absolute classic song, and great harmonies from the boys as well. Surfer Girl is number 2. A very simple lyric about falling in love with a girl on the beach, and the harmonies are just to die for, and I just absolutely love it. And the same with number 1, the one song of mine for this list, In My Room. And one could have sworn that Brian Wilson wrote the lyric to this song, because it's so introspective and sort of in his style about, you know, he was a bit of a loner and maybe hid himself in his room. Well, he did for about 10 or 15 years, hid himself away from the public, and got involved with Eugene Landy and all the rest of it, mental health problems. But he came back, and he thankfully lived to a relatively ripe old age, which is great. But Surfer Girl is just absolute magic, early Beach Boys, and number one in my room. Yeah, I mean, it's just a perfect song, and I think Tom Petty was saying this is one of his favourite tracks, and so this is my top 20 Beach Boys stroke Brian Wilson tracks that I did take into account his solo album and the tracks like Love and Mercy, which didn't do much for me. But it's a sad loss for the music business, but at least he did live to a good old age at the end, even though he, I would say post 71, he didn't really have the magic that I thought he had earlier on. And like James Griffiths was trying to get me into the Love You album from 77. I listened to it and I couldn't really think of much to recommend that. It didn't really move me. And 15 Big Ones is weak. MIU weak. Love and Mercy, the solo album, the self-titled solo album, I think it was called, but Love and Mercy was the opening track. That's okay. And Sunflower and Holland, Carl and the Passions never did much for me. But when he was good, he was very good. And Brian Wilson, you are a genius. I know that word is pandered around a lot and maybe overused, but when you were good, you were ecstatic, and you were, a master of, particularly of the production and the arrangement of the songs, even though you weren't a lyricist. He is a major part of 20th century music. So that was my tribute to Brian Wilson. Rest in peace.